Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Fairway Performance Podcast. Today I'm joined by Gary Christian, who has been kindly recommended to me by Mike Leonard. For those of you who know Wicked Smart Golf Man, he's told me that Gary is a guy that I need to get on the show and talk to you. So Gary, welcome. And do you want to give us a quick intro as to who you are and why Mike is such a high recommendation for you to come on the show?
I feel like there's a lot of pressure now, don't you? I was one of the oldest true rookies on the PGA Tour at 40 years old. Unfortunately, that career only lasted a couple of years. With injury ending that, I've pivoted into broadcasting and now do a bit of coaching, broadcasting, public speaking, corporate afternoons, and I've written a book as well. So I guess we would say we've got a pretty good knowledge of 20 years of a playing career and then about 10 years of other stuff around golf.
Yeah, wow. It shows me there's still hope for me. I mean, I'm 37.
Yeah.
I can still make it as a PGA Tour rookie at 40.
You're reaching your peak.
That is amazing, mate. So I've got so many questions that I can ask based on that. But let's first start with when you first started to pursue golf as a professional and tried to make it your career. What age was that, and sort of where were you in life at that point?
Yeah, it was actually a little bit later than most people. I came to America a little bit later on a golf scholarship at 20, finished at 24, but had an awful last year at college. So I was basically ready to go back to England. But for a couple of people that believed in me and let me live with them for a few years, it enabled me to kind of reconnect and get my game back. I'd always had the work ethic, and then just through repetition and hard work and perseverance, kind of got back to a stage where I could consider turning pro. But I didn't have anyone to back me until I was, I believe it's 28. So 27, 28 was when I properly turned pro. I'd play a few events before then just on money I'd saved up, but obviously that's no way to play a professional career. It was, living in a van, just trying to save a few dollars and hopefully you play well is not a great recipe for success. So at 28, was full-time as a professional and had 15 years in that space.
Yeah, right. And then from the research I've done, you had a Corn Ferry Tour win, and that obviously would have propped you up onto the PGA Tour, or it probably wasn't a Corn Ferry Tour back then. Was it web.com or something else? I'm not sure what the names before that were, but yeah, how many years did you spend playing the mini tours before you broke through and got onto the PGA Tour and played some events there?
Yeah, I was really hoping for a 6, 6, and 6 career. I had 6 years on the mini tours, 6 years on the Corn Ferry Tour where I won a couple of events. And then unfortunately I only got 2 years on the tour because of injury. But 6 years on the tour would have certainly changed my life. But it was a great journey to see yourself evolve as a player. And evolve of how you went about the game and how you went about practice and how you considered the game and how you considered what is the most effective route of playing your best golf. With me starting a little bit later, that also started to coincide with getting married, having a family, trying to juggle those responsibilities. It was quite an unusual path in that, most players get 5, 6, 7 years of it's all about them. It's just selfish, self-driven approach to being the best that you can possibly be. And fairly quickly I had to learn that I can't be quite as selfish as I want to, because I got a few other things that I need to deal with, in that I've got a family and a wife and kids. So it actually helped, I think, because it enabled me to be way smarter in the way I went about things, enabled me to have a quality of life off the golf course that wasn't affected by being selfish on and off the golf course.
Yeah, it's I think it has its pros and cons. Obviously, there's the sleepless nights with kids and that sort of thing that affect performance, but also there's having a bigger picture of gratitude, like being able to go home and spend time with your family and things like this that you sort of don't have when you're younger. And also the time efficiency as well. As a parent myself, I understand that I'm so much more efficient with my time and work now. I still think I can get a lot better, but having kids and having them take all of that time, before and after work that you used to just be able to do other things, it's like you sort of cram it all into that 8 to 10 hours a day that you have to work. So yeah, I definitely resonate with that. Now, obviously, 6 years on the mini tours, 6 years on the Corn Ferry, couple of wins, comes to the PGA Tour. What did you notice transitioning from cornferryweb.com into the PGA Tour? What was the standard of play like, travel, TV, all this stuff? how did that sort of change when you got to there?
Yeah, I was actually quite surprised. Obviously the PGA Tour is the greatest tour in the world. I was actually surprised that he just had to play solid to be successful out there. You just had to minimize mistakes, not have any overwhelming weakness in your game, and you would have a successful career out there. When I graduated from the Corn Ferry Tour, it was the nationwide tour back then. I would have graded my game as probably an A or an A minus. Everything was great. I struck the ball well, I chipped well, I putted well, I thought well, I managed my game well, I managed my time well. So really spot on. And then I made the FedEx Cup playoffs as a rookie, which is difficult to do, in the best of times, let alone being a 40-year-old rookie. And I would probably grade my game as maybe a B. And so it was, to me, it was a drop off in performance, and yet still, was relatively successful that first year. But it's, the courses are more demanding. They're more penal when you hit it in the wrong spot. Obviously, the standard of play is incredible, but when you looked at the Nationwide Tour and the Corn Ferry Tour, it's the same thing there. 20 years ago, you might have 50 players on the Corn Ferry Tour that you would say they kind of separated themselves. And when I graduated, it was probably 100, and now it's probably 120, where basically everyone in the field could win on any given week, and anyone in that field basically could be successful on the tour. The PGA Tour just, as I said, it just exaggerates any weakness. I think that's the thing that's probably the thing that stands out the most. You just got to be sure that you don't come to that tour with those weaknesses.
Yeah, 100%. Because like you see all these young kids these days. Like there's a young, I think he's part Australian, part another nationality. Just one in Puerto Rico. I think his name's Carl Lips or something.
Yeah.
He has literally just come from Corn Ferry to PGA Tour, like, in his first few starts. I don't know exactly how many starts he's had, already won on the PGA Tour, given it was an event that was in Puerto Rico while they had the Arnold Palmer on, so the big names were sort of up there playing. But just shows you like how good these kids are coming out of college into Corn Ferry and everything else. Like if it's your week and you're striking the ball well and you make 5 more birdies than you normally do, then, and the ball rolls in a few more times, lips in rather than lips out, then, it can be anyone's day really. It's just the level of competition worldwide. Obviously, coming in at 40 years old to the PGA Tour, like there's going to be, a bunch of pressure, or you're the oldest person like to ever go and do that. Was there any added pressure from like media or people, talking about that, or did you have any like mental, hurdles to jump through to do that, or were you just like really confident in your game at that point? You're like, screw this, like I'm going for it type thing.
Yeah, I obviously felt very confident in my game to have the performance that I did the previous year on the Nationwide Tours. There was no doubt I had earned a spot, and I'd proved myself time and time again that previous year. It's just something where, I would say probably I was always been a bit of an underdog. That took a little while to kind of get over that hurdle of you're standing next to Rory, or you're standing next to Tiger, or Phil Mickelson back in the day. I mean, they're those players that you had looked up to as something very different to what you are. And there you are, you're on a Wednesday afternoon, you're on the same score as them, waiting to tee off on Thursday morning. So that took a little bit to get comfortable with, but then you realize pretty quickly that they're just human, just like you. They have bad weeks, they have good weeks. Their good weeks are going to be better than my good weeks. Over the course of the year, that doesn't happen all that often unless you're Scotty Scheffler or Tiger in his prime. So there's that comfort in there, in that it's just golf, and you're just playing the golf course. You're playing to the best of your abilities, and you've proved that you're one of the best players in the world to get to that spot. So once you kind of get over the business of everything, and the cameras everywhere and tens of thousands of people left, right, and center, not following me, unfortunately, but when you got drawn with a more famous compatriot, then that took a little while to get used to, of just the hustle and bustle, and a different sight line down fairways, where I played with Tiger in the Barclays in my rookie year, and it was just amazing, just looking down the fairway off the tee. All you had to do was fit it between the people, and you're in great shape. And that was a sight line I'd never seen before, with 10 people following. So it was that there were some little things that did take a while to get used to, but I think being older, being more experienced, being wiser, having experienced most things that you would experience, I think it was easier for me, that it didn't overawe me as much as maybe it would have done for maybe someone who just had an upward trajectory their whole career, and then maybe they needed a few more years of seasoning.
Yeah, that's cool. I 100% agree with what you say there. Like being thrust into the limelight, you hear of Hollywood kid stars, like they're just sort of thrust into it without any life experience or knowledge. I think college these days is preparing kids a lot better for that transition. And with the coverage, like even down here in the Cayman Islands, like we on the Golf Channel will see NCAA championships and all this type of stuff, like different college kids playing golf. And a friend of a friend is Summer Hayes, and his kids are always on TV.
Yeah.
I see them playing. His daughter and both of his sons play, but one of them, Preston, is the one who's always on TV with the college. But they're used to this. He hangs out with Tony Finau, and he's already sponsored, and he's got all these different events. He's like traveling all the time to these different places and doing these things. I think potentially in your era, like it wasn't quite that. Like there wasn't the money thrust towards people to be able to experience all this stuff. And also, one of the things that a friend of mine, Ewan Porter, he's also a commentator, ex-Australian tour pro. So yeah, he and I are friends, and he was mentioning, he wanted to form a pathway for kids to get that experience in Australia, because we're very sheltered over that side of the world. 14 hours from LA, even further from the UK. So having something that could just prepare kids to then come over to the US and start to play in college and be prepared for that next level of golf. So he's actually formed a tour it's now called the Next Gen Am Tour. It used to be called the Adidas Super Sixes, and it's now transformed. But he's doing amazing work for them and preparing them for it, similar to yourself, like, trying to help people in similar situations to what you were when you were going through it. Now, 2 years playing on the tour. Let's talk about a few players that you played with. Obviously, you played with Tiger. Who are the other big names? Did you play with Rory or Phil or any of these guys?
Played with Jason Day, Ricky Fowler.
Yeah.
They were, I played with Jason actually the 2 rounds before I played with Tiger, so it was a great week playing in the Barclays. And just getting to experience 3 days straight of 2 of the best players in the world at the time, and what they go through, and the time commitments, the people wanting a piece of them. It really gave me perspective on number one, how different it was for me, but number two, how fortunate I was to not have to deal with that, and not have to have people around me to protect me from people who wanted a piece of me. I was walking down the fairway with Tiger on one hole, and said to him, I'll be honest, Tiger, I wouldn't swap my life for yours for anything. Just having watched what he went through for that time from when he arrived in the car park to when he finished his round of golf, it was just so much that you shouldn't have to deal with. And the stuff that people felt like they were able to say to him walking down the fairway, it must be so difficult to hear those things and know you can't react, know you can't say anything, because if you do, that's the story. It was a real eye opener. Play with someone like Ricky's, play with someone like Jason. It was nice to see 2 people who were certainly at the peak of their powers, but you felt like they had kept that humanity about them, that normalness that you maybe wouldn't see with Tiger, because Tiger is at the next level, the highest level possible. Jason and Ricky just both feel like what you see is what you get with them. They haven't really changed much since before they were world famous golfers, and that's refreshing to see that it is possible, even though you don't see the selfishness behind the hard work that they do, and the commitment that they have, and the ability to say no. They have managed to keep that essence of themselves that I think makes them happier off the course than maybe some other players are that are of the same level.
Yeah, 100%. That would be the toughest thing, I think, is like even in business, the more strict you are with being able to say no to other things and just focus on the sole source of revenue, or you're pursuing performance, like whatever the thing is, the more focused you can be on that, and the stronger your muscle is to say no to like red shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
The better you're going to be at your skills or the tasks that you have at hand. So it's cool to hear you say that. Jason and Ricky, pretty normal kind of guys. Maybe a little different these days because they've, risen to even more stardom than back when you were playing. Now, obviously, that's a couple of years on tour. What was it that derailed your, progress in the tour? And like, tell us about that. Like, how did the injury come about? What was it? And then, what was your mindset around that? And what made you sort of throw the towel in at the end, say like, that's it, like I've got to finish because it's either my body or the injury?
Yeah, unfortunately, it was just a freak accident where I slipped off a rock just walking around after a practice round in Canada, and I tore my ACL, MCL, patella tendon, and meniscus all at the same time. It wasn't a dramatic something. It's not like I got hit by a bulldozer or something. I just literally slipped and landed at the wrong angle, at the wrong speed, on the wrong surface, and everything shredded. So, and it was something that as soon as it happened, I basically said, well, that's that. I mean, I don't see myself coming back from this because it was so intense, the injury. And at 42 years old, or what it was at the time, it was going to be very hard to recover from that. If I was 25, I would have, felt a lot more comfortable. And I had it surgically repaired a couple of times, and it tore both times again. Maybe the rehab, maybe wasn't done great. Maybe the rehab wasn't perfect. I tried my best, and I came back probably too quickly the first time, and then the second time it just didn't work. And it was frustrating because I still felt like I had, at least 2 or 3 really good years in me because I'd kind of figured out the game. I'd kind of figured out what it is that made me a very competitive golfer. But it was easy to throw in the towel because when you can't play to the level that you are accustomed to, there's nothing worse than being that washed up boxer just keep taking prize fights for $50 at the time just to kind of still say you're a boxer. It was fairly easy to move on to something else, and the media was something that always interested me, and I'd always really enjoyed talking to the media, and I enjoyed listening to commentary and kind of giving my critiques in things and seeing what I thought worked and what things didn't work. And so there was just that curiosity, I think, and was fortunate enough to get connected to Sky Sports in England and did a couple of years over there covering the PGA Tour because they needed an English perspective who had actually played on the PGA Tour as opposed to playing on the European Tour, to give a little bit more context to what was going on. And as a result of that kind of built the profile and went from there.
Yeah, nice. And then thanks for sharing that. I know it's, not a pleasant thing to talk about, like your career-ending injury and going down that, sort of reliving it a little bit, and it's very devastating. But it's obviously afforded you this opportunity now to go into a different part of the game and explore that and get some enjoyment from that. So where did your career, or where has your career so far with broadcasting? Because I know you're still broadcasting now, and there's other things that you do. But where's that taking you now? Like, who are you working for now, and who was it sort of over the years up until this point?
Yeah, it's primarily PGA Tour Live, so covering the feature groups and the marquee groups, which I think is such a great opportunity because it helps the viewer understand how difficult the game is. To see the best players in the world hit awful shots, and to see the best players in the world hit wedges to 35, 40 feet, and to see the best players in the world miss short putts and miss fairways by 40 yards. I mean, it's the best tool that we can have because traditional golf just showed the players who were playing the best that week, and it seemed like they made every putt inside 10 feet, they hit every wedge inside 15 feet, and the game was easy, and it kind of gave an unrealistic expectation. So I really enjoy that, and I really enjoy watching the ups and downs of a round, and what stands out to me is how I coach in my philosophy of, they do everything they can to control what it is they can control. And when you listen to the player-caddy relationship and you listen to them discussing the validity of the choice of shot and, understanding that these guys can hit every single shot known to man. They have no problem hitting any shot. And yet they choose not to hit that perfect shot. They choose to hit that shot 20 feet away from a flag. And so if the best players in the world are doing that, then 15 handicappers who play once a week and hit a bucket of balls once a week, they can learn an awful lot from that, and they can learn from the plan that the player and the caddy are coming up with, because most of the time club golfers don't really have much of a plan. They just get up there and it's a par 4, so that, I guess that means driver. So hit a driver as hard as you can, hope for the best. If you hit it in the woods, well, that's just part of golf. You may have made that hole 10 times harder than it needed to be, because of the choice of how you thought was the best way to play that hole. So it really is fascinating to see how they hang in on a golf course in a round of golf when they're not playing well. I think that's where you learn the most from the PGA Tour players. Of those days when they're shooting around par, they're not hitting it very well, they're not punting very well, they're not chipping very well, but they just do enough to just hang in there. And then invariably they'll make a couple of birdies coming down the stretch and turn a 70 to a 70. They go on the range afterwards, work out the kinks, and come back next day and shoot 65. But that's what I preach to the players that I help, is that you're only 45 minutes away from fundamentally transforming a round of golf. And so if you've hung in there and you've made smart decisions and you never give up and you try your best in every shot, you've got a pretty good chance to turn that round around with that 45 minutes of good play. But if you've made poor decisions and you've given up and you've gone through the motions and all of a sudden you're 7 over par after 5 holes, all of a sudden if you have that 45 minutes where you make 3 pars in a row, it doesn't really fundamentally change the game. But if you had hung in there well enough to be 4 over after 7, now all of a sudden that good period of play can be a transformative section, and as an 8 handicapper you might get a chance to break 80 from not playing that well. And that's kind of where you see it at every single level, and the most successful players are the ones that don't beat themselves.
100%. And I think there's multiple things to take from what you're saying there, but it resonates with the people who are my audience. That they would have heard Mike Leonard talk about this. They've heard John Sherman talk about this. They've heard Scott Fawcett talk about this. Adam Young talk about this. All of these guys say exactly the same as you. They all play to really good levels as well. But it's about keeping your head in it, obviously, first and foremost, but not giving up on it. Like, you learn the most from how you deal with pressure and how you deal with tough situations when you actually are in that situation. If you end up in that position that you're talking about there, 7 over par after 5 holes, that's not the end of the round, because you can go around and shoot under par for the rest of the round or even par for the rest of the round. Like, there's nothing saying that you can't have 12 pars or 13 pars to finish the round out. In fact, some of my better rounds in club championships in Australia have been that I literally went double bogey to start, and this is when I was off around a 4 or 5 handicap. So I was like, oh well, there goes my handicap. The next, 14 holes or 15 holes, I went around. It was either 1 or 2 under par for the next block of holes. So it's like I've just turned that into playing to my handicap. There was still bogeys in there, but there was 2 bogeys and 3 birdies. So you still got to expect the ups and downs. It's not just a linear line across it.
But I think that's the important thing about these podcasts these days. That in that we're showing that there's a different approach to golf above the traditional approach of just working on mechanics all day long. And I think most players, certainly in my era, were of the similar mindset of you, in effect, try to perfect your swing, and you'll go shoot in the 60s every single time you play. Sorry about that.
That's right.
If you just perfect the game and you perfect the swing, well, you're always going to shoot in the 60s. And so, why would you need to worry on anything else? And you figure out fairly quickly that doesn't work, but you keep bashing your head against a brick wall, trying to make this work. I think, like I was talking about with this podcast now, we're seeing that wisdom and common sense and different approaches and things outside the mechanics of the game are certainly as useful, I would argue more useful, to make successful performance on the golf course. From anything from how you practice, how you treat your body, how you treat your mind, how you train mentally to get ready for a tournament physically. There's so many different approaches to it. And, we would all love to have the ability to say, I can devote hours and hours and hours and hours a week to physical, mental, spiritual, emotional training, seeing coaches hitting thousands of balls each week. But, in all reality, there's a tiny, tiny percentage of people who are able to do that, who are not professional golfers. And so we've got to look at smarter uses of our time to be able to get the most bang for our buck. And so the more people actually listen to these kinds of podcasts, they'll see that actually there's some quite successful people who are telling you basically the same thing. And if you're hearing that thing over and over again, maybe it's worth considering a different path. And I think you'll enjoy the game a lot more, because I think you'll be more in control of yourself and more in control of your time to get the most out of it. Understanding expectations obviously is such a big deal. And I think you enjoy the game when you understand how hard the game is. But if you give yourself a better chance to perform well, then you're going to get better results, which will make you enjoy the game even more.
Yeah, and I think that like these days there's lots of tools that help with that as well, with that expectation management.
Mm.
Like a lot of people go out as a 10 handicap and they expect that they should be able to make a certain amount of birdies per round, or not make a certain amount of doubles. Inherently, there's an average of how many doubles, birdies, plus that a 10 handicap will have. They're going to finish, or they're probably shooting regularly about 12 over par if they're a 10 handicap, because a handicap is just less, like 0.93 times our actual average over par, right? And that's our best 8 scores out of the last 20. So in actual fact, you're probably like a 12 to 14 handicap if you're playing off 10. You should be hitting, shooting 12 to 14 over par. So like firstly, just having that as the expectation. You're not going to always shoot the best. Like 8 out of 20 times you're going to shoot around there, but the other 12, which is 60% of your rounds, are going to be higher than that. So having that firstly as the expectation. Secondly, Mark Brody's Strokes Gained, I think, is an amazing book. If anyone hasn't read that, it will just give you so much insight as to different like numbers as like PGA Tour players versus scratch golfers versus everyone else. So, and then the way that is transforming into actual on-course knowledge now, and actually seeing it real time, is with the ARCOS sensors, or ARCOS sensors. You can literally see how you are stacking up strokes gained versus everyone else that's playing to your same handicap. Are you hitting more greens than them? Are you hitting more fairways? Are you making as many up and downs? Are you making as many feet in putts? Is your proximity to approach shots as close as other people? And it gives you specifically what to work on based on that. And then there's an absolute plethora of apps these days which will give you practice games and all sorts of other stuff. A fellow countryman of yours, actually, Will Shaw, a biomechanist, and Will, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I literally interviewed him a few weeks ago. He's got an app called BreakX Golf, which actually gives you games to play. We were talking about all the different games that he plays, through the app that people can work on. Like if you're working on driver, it's a don't miss left game. So you've got 10 balls, you can't miss left, and you've got to hit to a 50-yard fairway. And then that's your last 10 balls at the range, and give yourself a score. And then the next time you try and beat that, there's ones for putting. But the one that he said, if you can master it, it was like 2 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet, and you've got to make like 4 putts from each spot. And he said, if you can make it through all of them, like you're a PGA Tour level golfer, if you can make it to like 4 feet and get most of them in from 4 feet or 6 feet, then like you're pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But there's all these different games that you can play, and they're all just designed to mimic a little bit of pressure that you feel on the course when you're actually out there, but that you don't gain if you, like myself, I literally haven't played in 2 or 3 weeks. I'm excited to get out this Sunday and play, but I haven't played in 2 or 3 weeks. So my expectations when I go out as a 2 handicap is to probably break 80. I'd be really happy if I broke 80. 8 over par, I'd be really stoked with that, because I haven't swung a club. I don't know how fast the greens are rolling. It's going to be windy as hell because I live in the Cayman Islands. It's going to be like 20 to 30 mile winds. There's water on 14 holes, and I'm inevitably going to lose at Pro V1 in one of those bits of water. Like I'm not going out expecting to, be able to shoot to my handicap or even par. So just having that expectation there, and I see it just get tossed out when people get to that point I was mentioning before, 5 over through 3 holes, and you can just throw it away and just be like, oh well, fuck it, like I've already busted my handicap, like no point trying to play for it now. It's like, no, that's actually the best time to be trying as hard as you can, because it teaches you when you're in that situation, what are your tendencies, and then you can learn from that. For the guys that you teach and you work with who do see themselves give up in that situation, what are some things or bits of advice that you give to them, or things to try in order to not make it seem like such an insurmountable task? Let's use my example there. 5 over through 3 holes off a 5 handicap, 15 holes to go. What are you getting me to do?
Yeah, and I think it comes back from practice. Like you said, the ability to practice under some sort of pressure or some sort of purpose, I think is the most important thing, because that gives you, people always complain about, oh, I can't go, I hit it really good on the range, and then I can't take it to the golf course. Well, most of the time, just raking balls and hitting the 7-iron to the same flag, it doesn't replicate golf. So you're not really putting yourself in position to give yourself the best chance on the golf course, because you always have the ability to hit another ball if you don't hit a good one. And so I love having people go around different targets, different clubs, and just try and replicate a little bit of what it's going to be like on the golf course. But it goes back to me of just trying to treat every shot as the most important shot in the round. So I preach hard about the routine, the mental and physical routine, to put yourself in the best frame of mind, to make the best decision, to take how it is you're playing today, to make the best decision possible on each shot. That decision may be different from day to day because you're playing different. Most people almost have a childlike sensibility of, well, this is the best shot I can possibly, I remember I can do, so I'll hit this one. And then it invariably goes wrong, and they're playing poorly that day anyway. So why would your expectations be that you can hit this great shot that you may have only hit once in your life anyway? It is amazing, just the mindset of most players, that they have that. So I'm the same. I haven't played in a number of weeks. I'm playing tomorrow morning, and I just know that I've got to focus much more than maybe I would do if I'm playing every day, to be able to give myself the best opportunity of some sort of success. And it's going to be narrowing my focus on targets. It's going to be picking wise clubs that give me as much wiggle room as I possibly can, but still give me an opportunity to have a look at birdie. But if I'm out of position, then I'm going to try and minimize the damage and make no worse than bogey. For higher handicaps, I think it's always fascinating when you put yourself out of position on a let's say on a par 4. And I carry around a couple of old beer cans with sand in them, and I put them either side of the ball in the middle of the trees and say, okay, we're playing a par 4 from here, from 120 yards. How are we going to make a par 4 from here, which will be a 5 in total? You are in a position right now where if you make one bad decision, you're making 6 or potentially more. So how can we manage our way here and live to fight another day? And that that kind of gives a little bit better perspective on things and allows you to make smarter decisions every single time. I love the theory of just hit and drive as far as you can. But if you don't know where the club is, you don't know where the face is, you don't know where the path is, and you're out of rhythm, you're out of sequence, to me, it just brings in more and more bad things. Maybe you do have a club that you have a go-to club that is less destructive than a driver on your worst day. These are the things you got to have: a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. Plan A is to hit driver everywhere and get it as close to the green as possible and have as many opportunities as you can to hit greens in regulation. That's great. But some days we're not quite on it. And so we may need to have a hybrid of that and a little bit more of a conservative game plan. And then there's just days where that driver is so destructive that you're basically in your pocket every single hole. And so that's not a very fun way of playing golf. You might need to find a way to say, hey, how do I make a bogey or a double bogey as a 15 handicapper on every single hole? Is there any way I can do this? And you'll actually have a little bit of fun trying to figure it out and say, okay, I think I can get away with driver here because I've got 70 yards worth of room between trouble on each side. And I can feel like I can fit it in there. But again, it goes back to practice. If you don't practice those kinds of mindsets when you're not playing well, then it's very overwhelming when you get to a golf course.
Yeah, 100%. And I see, so from what you're saying there, one of the statistics, I can't remember who shared it with me, it might have even been in strokes gained or every shot counts, sorry. I think Mark Brody talks about it. It's 8 out of 10 times a PGA Tour player goes into the woods or into the trees off their tee shot. 8 out of 10 times they make a bogey. 2 out of 10 times they'll get up and down. But those 2 out of 10 times are what you guys show on TV.
Exactly.
The broadcasters will talk about it because it's so good. Like, because it's 20% of the time it will happen.
Exactly.
Even the stat of
damage. They remove double bogeys, which are obviously destructive for a PGA Tour player.
Yeah.
But when you're a mid-level handicap player and you're in the trees maybe 5, 6, 7 times around, that's really destructive when you make 5 or 6 doubles.
Yeah. And how much of a better feeling is it and how much less pressure is it to, chip it out to a point where you've got a really comfortable, good distance for approach into the green, you can then pull yourself together to hit it to a sensible spot on the green and then make a decent putt. It feels like a birdie, but you're just saving a par, but you essentially have saved a shot. You've saved two shots essentially by not making it a bogey or a double. So if you're playing to, that 10 or 15 handicap.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways a mid-level handicapper or a high handicapper can improve is have two shots that they learn. One is a club that they know they can hit decently, 150 yards, just to get back in position. And then another club that they know they can get on the green almost every single time from we'll find it, let's say, inside 70 yards or whatever it is. But a distance where you can aim right in the middle of the green and stick it right there with some sort of wedge. If you can do that, all of a sudden now it becomes a lot more manageable, where you're not trying to do too much with that second shot from a bad spot that brings in potentially a dumb shot on top of a bad shot, where now we start to really spiral. And then everything starts moving fast, and then we put ourselves in a bad position. We kind of rush the chip, then we hit a bad chip, then we rush the putt, we hit a bad putt. And we may have turned what was should have been a relatively simple bogey from a not a great spot into a double or a worse. And that's the sort of the conundrum of how best to go about the game. But I just think that that's the two shots I work on most with 15 handicappers, is to see, can we get a manageable technique to enable me to hit a wedge onto a green from a certain distance or around a certain distance? And do we have a club that we have? Most people just have that club, don't they? That they say, oh man, if my life depended on it, I'm going to hit this club. Well, it may be a 7-iron, but it may be a 5-iron. It may be a 9-iron. I don't care what it is, but we want to know we can move that ball forwards every single time, basically where we're aiming it.
Yeah, it's good to have that in the back pocket, isn't it? Yeah, just to know you can get out of trouble there. The other thing I was going to say to your point before was I think one of the other expectation management things, and also things that sort of mid-level handicappers really get wrong from what I see, is I'm very quick to, if I'm hitting the ball right for the day, like say I'm shaping it left to right and it's going further right than I want it to, for wind, for an open face, outside to in swing path, whatever it might be, I'm just going to adjust my aim and start hitting it further left and keep swinging it exactly the same. I'm not making any functional or technical changes on the golf course. I'm just taking a hit to the ego and saying, today I'm hitting a shit slice and I'm just going to aim it further left. Sometimes it'll go straight and I'm like careful not to aim it into the rough or out of bounds left like that far in case I do hit one straight. But I'm just aiming it far enough left to save me room on the right hand side. And if I do, double cross one a little bit, it's probably not going to go as far left as it could go right. So I think a lot of golfers they'll get up to the next one and to your point before, like the best shot they've ever hit in a certain situation, and they'll just try and do that thing. They think of their drive every single time as the best shot they've ever hit, and they can do that same thing and it's going to be replicable. But it's probably like 2 in 10 or 2 in 20 times that they're actually going to pipe one down the middle as a 15 handicap. So it's a matter of choosing better start lines and aim points and being humble with that and being like, okay, cool. Like, I'm sure the pros do it as well. I'm sure if you were on tour and you were hitting a bit further left to right than normal, you'd be like, cool, well, I'm just going to aim a bit further left today. Or you probably, had a bit more knowledge about how to adjust your swing, because you're hitting way more balls than an average golfer. But it's just taking that little hit, because everyone just steps up to that and thinks that they can just hit that shot every time. Would you agree with that statement or the observation?
I would say so. Yeah, I mean, it's just about managing yourself and just paying attention when you're in one of those rounds. How did you deal with it? What was the way that you got through this round? And then kind of put that in the memory bank. I think most people, I think awareness, the word awareness is such a huge word for me, because, most of the time we get so taken up with a round of golf, we don't really pay much attention to what's actually going on. And then, the brain's working a bit too quick, and, we just don't really take a moment to kind of consider what it is we're doing and why. But awareness of, what we're thinking, awareness of our body tension, awareness of all these other factors that we can use as a body of evidence going forwards. Every round of golf I played was kind of, I made decisions based on my library of experiences. And you are able to manage a round of golf as a result of that. You can maybe pluck back a round you played on the links course with 60-mile-an-hour winds, and how you handled adversity and how you could just basically forget about. And you could apply that to another round of golf on an extremely difficult golf course with some difficult conditions. And that's kind of comforting in that you've experienced it before. But if you're not aware of it and you don't sit down maybe after the round, you lose that body of evidence. I was talking to Colin Swatton, who obviously mentored and caddied and coached Jason Day for years, and actually coaches Carl Phillips as well. So that's another nice link to some of the best players in the world. And he would talk about, their day with Jason when he was the number one player in the world was, obviously all the physical stuff, the warming up, the stretching, the round of golf, the eating, the cool down, the warm down, whatever it was. But then every day they would go over their round. And they would, kind of talk about the round, talk about shots, and talk about why, and talk about what happened and what they could have done differently the next time. And I think that is a really good way of becoming a better player. Instead of coming home and kicking the garbage can when you get home and saying, I hate golf, maybe just pat the garbage can on the top of it and say, I'm just going to go and have a quiet think for 10 minutes and just go over the round and just say, hey, what could I have done differently today? How could I have managed my way better? And then you'll say, shot 95, but if I could have just done A, B, and C, I could have shot in the 80s, still not played any good, but just managed myself better. I'm going to try and learn from that. I'm going to try and have that as a library of evidence that next time I'm in that situation, which I can guarantee you'll be in again, and pretty quickly, you can use that to do better. And then what you do, you pat yourself on the back when you do that. And you say, wow, I learned from that awful round. And look at what I've just done here. I've just turned a 95 into an 88, or I've turned a 78 into a 74. That's how you become better.
Yeah. 100%. It's a bit of self-reflection, just with anything, right? Like if people put their money into the stock market, they're not just going to be like, oh, kick the garbage can and pull it out. They're going to reflect on, what happened, where it went, why it went that way, do all of these things. But golf just has this sort of ego thing about it. We always think we can play better, but not many people take the time to do it because it's a hobby, or they drank too many beers while they were playing, or whatever it might be.
Well, I think it's quite interesting that in order to get better, people usually have that built-in excuse of, I don't have time. Well, maybe they don't have time to hit thousands of balls a week, but they do have time to take a quick reflection after a round of golf, or they do have time to take 10 seconds more before they hit a golf shot to consider if this is a smart target, or if this is a smart club selection, or based on how I'm playing, is this a wise way for me to play this hole? That doesn't take that much time. And we're, semi-highly evolved human beings or creatures. We should be able to figure this out. And so it's kind of getting that bang for the buck. And I think that using your time a little bit more wisely and productively, I think is hugely beneficial. And you can certainly get a lot better with the short game and putting at home, just chipping around on the carpet and just a little bit more repetition that way. I mean, it's very hard, to go hit balls and actually see the ball fly. Obviously, indoor simulators are great. Hitting into a net's fine, but you don't really get that same understanding of what the ball's actually doing as you do when you see it fly.
Yeah, 100%, or like how much the wind affects it and all these types of things. You sort of need to be on a course to see that. So this is, I'm guessing, where the title of your book has come from, right? Like beat the course, not yourself. You're wanting people to take stock of and build this library for themselves. So they're not beating themselves, it's them against the course, right? They're using that library of knowledge to then, go and put it into the practice of being on the course to obviously shoot the best score that they can. Is that correct? That's where this has come from, and tell us about that.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say it's my coaching philosophy of, but it's a metaphor for life. If you can control what it is that you have the ability to control, your results are going to be way better. And most people, who are successful in business do a really good job of that. And then when they get to the golf course, they completely forget that outlook and completely lose the plot and don't control anything that they can control. It's just, it sounds easy, but again, if you're unaware of what you're telling yourself, or you're unaware of decision making, or you're unaware of what expectations should be for your level of play, it's very hard to control what it is you can control. But all of a sudden, when you start to pay attention to those things, and you start to pay attention to watching PGA Tour players discuss with their caddies the best plan for each shot, now all of a sudden you start to see, okay, here's something that I can do. Here's something I can do that's going to make me more efficient, make me score better, make me enjoy the game more. Just the simple fact of I see so many people get so frustrated playing a game that they say they love playing. And I wonder why they bother playing it, because it just doesn't look like it's doing them any good mentally. Because at the end of the day, they're just, emotionally shot. They're mad. They take their disappointment and frustration away from the course to home and around their family. And so, it just goes again from every situation of how you practice, of having a purpose when you practice. When you're over every shot, you know what it is you're actually trying to achieve. How do you react in between shots? Because in many respects, that's what's going to dictate your chance of hitting a good shot. So if you think about it, if all goes well, you have a really good routine, you make a good decision, you hit a good shot, you pat yourself on the back, and you kind of walk to the next shot in a really good frame of mind, which then gives you the best chance to be focused on the next routine and the next shot, and the chances are you'll hit a good shot there, and that builds. Well, conversely, if you don't have much of a plan, you don't have much of a routine, you hit a bad shot, you get mad, and you spend that next 3 or 4 minutes stewing over that last shot and getting frustrated with yourself, that's going to naturally bleed into the next routine and the next decision, which is going to lead into the next poor shot, which will lead to the next bad reaction. And so the cycle continues there. So we are very much in control of what we do before we ever move the golf club. And I think that's kind of where I look at. It's that time before we ever move the golf club that is going to give us the best opportunity to have the best result. It doesn't guarantee a good result, but it certainly makes it way more likely that something good's going to happen.
Yeah, and Mike Leonard talks about this a lot. Learning your mental golf type is a big thing to helping with that. Being an extrovert, I've always played much better when I've played in like club tournaments against other clubs, like pennant matches we have in Australia. And when I have a caddy there with me, I'll talk through the shot. I'll tell them what I'm going to do. And I know tour players obviously have this same experience with every round they play. But whenever I play with a caddy, because I'm being external with my expectations and what I'm going to hit and how I'm going to hit it and what I'm taking into consideration, it goes through that checklist because they're also mirroring that back to you. Mm-hmm. And I find I play much better with them. I hit shots closer. I hit it how I'm going to. It's part of, like wanting to prove something to somebody as well. I find it helps me, sort of watch this, like hold my beer, I'm going to hit this shot type thing. That's how I feel about it. It helps me play really well, but that's not for everyone. Some other people might be better if they internalize it. So learning what your sort of Myers-Briggs or mental golf type is and, being able to apply that and create your own pre-shot routine that works for you, I think is a huge part to helping people be in the moment and present before they hit the shot and take away the before and after, the prep for it, and then also the dealing with the emotions that come up from whatever shot you've just hit.
Yeah, I think it's the 2 Fs. You want to be focused and free. I think those 2 words are so important. I host travel to the UK. Obviously, I'm biased, but it's just such a great place to go to see the home of golf, and whether it's Scotland or Ireland or England, it's such a different way of playing. But I think it kind of frees you up a little bit, especially if you have a caddy, where you kind of put a little bit of trust in their hands. A caddy says, aim at that sheep on that hill up there. You don't really ask why. You just say, oh, you want me to hit it at that sheep up there on the hill? Great, I'll do that. Well, now you're not thinking of those distractions of, how about that bunker down that left side, or what about those trees down the right side? You are just focused on that target, that smallest target possible, and you just hit it over there. A lot of the time you hit some really good shots. It's just amazing when you speak to regular club golfers. They say, oh, God, I had one of the best rounds of my life. And, the caddy just told me where to hit it. God, it was so free, and I just swung it, and I didn't know what was over that hill or over that dune, and God, most of the time I was in the middle of the fairway. Man, that was a great way of playing golf. I had the same thing when I played on the Corn Ferry too. We played in Panama every year, and no one could very few people could afford to bring their own caddies. So we just had local caddies. Most of the caddies didn't speak very good English, and they just kind of pointed and gesticulated for putting, and it kind of freed you up. I would just stand on the side of the green. I would ask him what it did. and he would, do a picture of a cup and put his finger on the right lip, and then I'll do that, and I putted really well. But it was that focus and freedom just to do, just to let it go. There's a huge part of that. If you can practice just being over a ball, knowing you've got the best decision possible, knowing you've got the right club in your hand, and then just letting it go. And then whatever happens, happens. But I think you can deal with the consequences a lot more than if you have regrets after a shot of, I wish I'd have done this, or I wish I'd thought this differently, or I wish I'd have had a different plan on that. I can't believe I just hit that. I think that's what we want to get to play our most successful golf, that regret-free end to the shot.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point to leave it. Focused and free is the last point for the day. Focused on what you're doing by being committed to whatever it is, and free because you know what you're doing, you know what you're aiming for, or you've picked the target and you're going to live with the consequences because you've picked and thought about that target being the thing. I think this is incredibly insightful for a lot of, potentially my clients and lots of mid-handicap golfers that are going to take a lot away from this. If someone wants to dive further into the things that you're doing, or, hear you talk on TV, where can we find you in all those different avenues or outlets?
Yeah, I got a website, GaryChristianGolf.com. Also my email, GaryJChristian@gmail.com. But the website kind of talks a little bit of what I do, from coaching to broadcasting to my bio to travel hosting to motivational speaking. When you're a 40-year-old rookie, you've got some pretty good messages that resonate well with lots of people in lots of different aspects of life. And so, I'd love to contact with people and get in touch with people. I have a thirst and a love and an excitement for the game and an inquisitiveness for the game. Even though you've been around it for 40 years, you're always learning. And just to be around other people that look at the game a little differently, it certainly helps me just to stay refreshed, and listening to guys like you and listening to guys like Michael. Kind of a lot of the time it validates what you've been talking about. But if there's other little bits that I can add or you can add, then I think it just makes that picture a little bit clearer for the golfer who wants to get better and doesn't necessarily have hour upon hour upon hour to be able to get better.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, that's like pretty much everyone I talk to. They want the best results from the minimum amount of time spent, because we've just got so many other things in our lives that are going on these days. So
life is busy. Oh, and by the way, Beat the Course, Not Yourself, available on Amazon. So it's right. I think it's right by Michael's book, Wicked Smart Golf. So I need to sell a few more copies just to get above him if I can.
Yeah, well, hopefully a few of the guys listening to this, or ladies, will jump on and take you up on that. So I know I am definitely going to take you up on that. It did not come up in my research before the show that you had a book, so that's good to know now. And I'll let you know whether it's better than Mike's or not. I won't tell him.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, mate. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Shaun. That was great.